This is your typical Hippiefest show poster with a lot of bands, Molson's Amphitheater, and it had a real good collection of rock shows playing the hits of the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, each band plays like 4 of their big hits.
Yeah, and then next on it was...
The funny part was the Turtles, so everyone wants to do Happy Together because there's a big chorus. So,
right.
You know, do. So it's like, what do they do? So those are all 2-minute songs.
Right.
But they want to play for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
They just keep it going, the whole crowd. Do. We do it for 10 minutes, and they do another 10-minute song. But every song by these guys, every song would have been 2 minutes long.
Right.
But when they did Hippiefest, they did 4 songs that were each 8 minutes long.
Right.
And just played the big hits, as you say. That's all anyone wanted to hear anyway.
Right.
Country Joe and the McDonald, you know, it's the rag, the Vietnam rag, or whatever they call it. And,
it's Welcome, My Friend. His Protest Vietnam song, that was big. Same with Mitch Ryder. So it was a good show because everyone did 5 or 6 hits, and then there was the next band over. So,
and these are a lot of bucket list people. Like, we saw them all back in the original day. But you can see it's a lot of people my age that never went to rock concerts.
Right.
Say, okay, now I've seen the Turtles, I've seen the Zombies.
Right.
But it's nothing like what they were original. First of all, the crowd's very old and calm. It was chaos back in the early days. There'd be fights going on and people sneaking whiskey bottles in. It was very crazy, the early days of rock, both on stage and in the crowd.
Yeah. It's kind of a good historical poster because of the number of different bands.
But it's a nominal value, $20.
All right. Islands of Light poster with Todd Rundgren, a graphic poster on Toronto Island.
Parachute Club was a Toronto band. They're not really that known anymore.
No, and the big band there was...
Rundgren was the headliner,
Todd Rundgren.
And Tom Cochran was popular.
It was kind of good because we built a pyramid stage on the island, so that was funky, and Much Music came and broadcast the whole show, and that made it
Rundgren still has a good following, and he still produces and writes music.
Yeah.
There's been a big push to try and get him in the Hall of Fame, but I don't think they've had success yet.
All right. Typical country show poster. This is the annual Jamboree in the Hills. Their posters are worth something because they always have all of them, but they mail these posters out to you too. So I guess they wouldn't be worth that much, but it is a collection of a lot of country stars.
Right.
You know, but not worth much. So let's hit a few more.
I see the Judds were on that one, and the one Judd passed away, the mother, and the daughter, Winona, is going out still as the Judds tour, but it's only her, and it will be the final one ever. Yeah. But they look like they're the headliner there.
Yeah, they were one of them, because that was their big...
They were very popular, for sure.
Next one's another country one, but, you know, like I said, there's a lot of these posters around. They're not...
The country ones tend not to go for as much money.
Right.
Because they're so into merchandising and corporate sponsors. There's just so much stuff put out there for country. Yeah. And it's all flavor of, you know, whoever the good-looking young guy is that's singing the song about his pickup truck and his dog, and then it's next year's version of that.
They sell good to country people or country bars because it has, 20 pictures of country stars.
But they don't pay the money they do for classic rock.
No, they don't.
$20, $30.
Yeah. All right. The big Knebworth concert, which was a big, big outdoor festival. Yeah. But it only had 2 of the stars. The poster is really down there, the big one. All the other stars that played to it, but we'll get to that poster next.
Elton, and Dire Straits.
And that was when Dire Straits were really big in England.
Now, this looks like it might have been published by the Daily Star newspaper.
Yeah, the newspaper made the poster.
So probably there's a lot more out there. Not usually. You'd rather have it issued by the promoter.
Right.
Because then it's going to be rarer.
I think the next one is that poster, yeah. See, there's that poster.
Now, this would be a very valuable poster.
Which is right down here. But if you can see the bands that played at this show, this
is a beautiful poster.
I consider this one of the best concerts ever because if you look at that lineup, it was made to raise money for children's healing of kids that had emotional problems or brain problems. They built music studios to help heal the kids with music. But all the big British bands played at this show. Yeah. Page had joined with Robert Plant and did Led Zeppelin. Pink Floyd closed the show. McCartney played it. This concert started at 10:30, so better than the Live Aid show. All these bands got to play 40 minutes, and then the last 3 bands at the end got to play, like Pink Floyd played for an hour and a half, and McCartney an hour and a half. So Knebworth is their famous outdoor
all the venue. Knebworth posters are valuable.
Yeah.
The first one being the most valuable, which is maybe 69, somewhere in there,
Yeah.
69 or 70. It's north of $1,000.
Yeah.
Now, this one might be a $500 poster.
The thing with Knebworth was a lord owned it, so he could just declare his land a concert land, and no one can complain in England because I'm a lord and I own it, so I get to do what I want on my property. And Knebworth, they had like 20 concerts at least of 100,000 people.
Now they tend to do the big ones at Wembley. You don't hear quite as much.
No.
Isle of Wight was also popular back
Right.
in the day, right?
So let's flip to some other ones here. Now this is another Knebworth concert.
It's not as graphic, but I think it's rarer.
Yeah.
This one's also not in the greatest condition. You obviously stole this off a wall somewhere.
Yeah, because for some reason they didn't want to sell posters.
Well, usually they didn't. If
Back
you
in
go back
those
this
days.
far, the posters were just made to promote the show. They weren't made for souvenirs.
This is like 1975, so it's a very old poster. And this show was actually a week after Pink Floyd played in Hamilton.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, a Saturday after. And
I was still recovering then, probably. That was a good show, the Hamilton
the
show.
good part here is they had Mighty Python between set changes, do comedy shows and other sets. But they had 100,000 people on it. And since it was Pink Floyd's hometown, they brought all the toys out at their show. The big circle screen, the plane crashing into the stage, and all their other toys. So Knebworth was the best place to see Pink Floyd at any time. So the Live Aid.
This was a takeoff on Live Aid.
Yes.
They did 8 major cities in the world, I believe,
Right.
of which Canada had.
Mentions them here, Barrie, Canada, but no one made posters of this show. So I got this poster. I stole it off a post in Barrie, Ontario, because they never made posters of this Live Aid. They just sold tickets.
I think there might have been a few posters
No,
made.
because
but
I tried and
Really?
looked there, and Gordon Lightfoot was there, and I got backstage through Gordon Lightfoot's manager.
That's unusual. So is this more like a playbill? Or
Yeah, just announcing that Barrie is host of the show. In fact, Barrie paid for the poster to be made to show, hey, we're part of this Live Aid show.
This was supposed to be, it was a takeoff on Live Aid and the success of Live
Yeah.
Aid, and they thought, but this never really panned out.
And it never did much.
No, it's most people don't even remember it.
Right.
It would have just nominal value because of that, even though there was some good acts on that tour in the various cities, right?
Right. But this was the one that was worth a lot. And actually, this is a made-up poster. I took it
Because
from
that's
the program,
the tour program cover.
and then I took a flyer I had of the two lineups.
But you also have, that's UK,
Yeah, that's
and this is Philadelphia,
right.
correct?
This is the UK lineup, and then this is the Philadelphia.
Oh, at the
lineup,
bottom.
at the
Okay.
bottom.
You made this
Yeah,
particular
I
one?
made this poster because no one made any
Okay,
posters
well
of
then.
Live Aid. So I
What do
decided,
you want to sell them for?
I don't know, but
Start making them.
a lot of people
Make
asked
sure
me for
Bob
them.
Geldof isn't going to sue us. So,
But it was good because it showed all the bands that
no,
played
people
on
would
both
love to have a
sides.
poster like that. And people love, I have an old Stones poster that's done like this, which is long and narrow. People like something a different shape because they might have a spot to fill in their man cave, and they like getting that would go perfect in that one spot. And you don't see many posters made like that, tall and narrow.
Actually, a lot of people asked me for that poster because here it is, just simply made. I just took a flyer and the program book, photocopied them, then screened
So
them.
Wolf will do a full session on making your own tour posters now. We'll do another one. And,
A lot of people have asked me for that
well,
poster.
you made a few
because-
other. I know I went to some of your Beatle fests.
Yeah.
You made some beautiful. That Beatle poster was
Yeah.
very famous that
Yeah.
you made.
All right, we'll go to the next one. This one I like because it was Mariposa. If you're a Toronto guy, Mariposa on Toronto Island was really
This
funky.
is the ferry to the island,
Yeah.
obviously.
So that's why it was a good graphic poster.
In the early days, that was the start of like folk.
Yes.
Joni Mitchell and everyone used to go to those, and it was quite had some notoriety outside of Canada, but now it's more a local thing. I
Yeah,
think.
its days were over, but back those days was here. Now this was when the Mariposa was at Molson's Park, and the big boys, not the Mariposa folks, but the big sponsors, paid for this show because the lineup was unbelievable here. They took all the big, greatest
I could
folks.
see Ricky Skaggs and Arlo Guthrie, There's a
Tracy
lot of
Chapman, Taj Mahal.
Yeah.
You know, so, but that was the glory days of Mariposa at 88. Never ever got that bigger and never had that many stars. This was probably $500,000 to $1 million show budget because they just paid for all the stars to come there of the folk nature. Okay, this poster, is worth a fair amount of money.
Right.
Because you see the Eagles and you see Joe Walsh. So after that show, the next day in England, they announced that Joe Walsh has joined the Eagles. And this was Elton John's Captain Fantastic tour, which he did at Wembley Stadium, which was really big. And here's the real poster. Now, I think this is one of my most expensive collect posters. It was 1975, Captain Fantastic, Wembley Stadium. And the Beach Boys were still big then, and there was still some of the original guys. But the Eagles and Joe Walsh joining made it worse. So I figure this is several $100 poster, but I'm not
in
sure.
good condition, it's probably worth $1,500.
Yes.
But, again,
75
you got
years
paper
of-
loss up in the corners from.
It was my
taking-
early days when I used to stick them on the wall before I realized, hey, that poster might be worth something. I better take care of it. And then I realized, oh, there's some famous things with Joe Walsh joining the Eagles and his Captain Fantastic. There were like 80,000 people at this stadium tour. In fact, the good part is Ringo Starr was just sitting a few seats behind me because he was a guest of Elton John because they were friends.
Oh, wow.
So, typical country poster flyer, not worth much, but it was a great show with Conway Twitty, 20,000. We'll just flip to the next one. Same with that one at Rock Hill Park, which was a famous
Oak Ridge Boys were huge. Now they're not very big at all.
Yeah, no.
People know of them, but they're not real popular acts.
Interesting show about this at Rock Hill Park, which was a really good funky trailer park for concerts. When the Oak Ridge Boys played, the women were just charging the stage. And my security guards were getting beat up because you don't want to hit a woman, but the women, they were swinging their purses at the guys. Smack, get out of the way, I want to get out of the stage. And I was just shocked by how many women were trying to get on stage. So we had to double up on the security to keep them away because I guess they were...
Now they're 80 years old. All the women are rolling up in their wheelchairs and walkers. It's not quite the same anymore.
Yeah, it was a surprise show. This was a good poster that Glenn found.
I found this at a music show, and I asked the guy, I go, what would you like for it? And he goes, 50. And I'm going, I'm not sure what he means. I go, $50? He goes, yes, boom. I couldn't have paid him quick enough. Then I had about 5 people following me around the show. You want to sell that? You want to sell that? Because the interesting thing here is this is before Motown, so it's actually Motortown Revue, which became shortened to Motown. And this is little Stevie Wonder, just in his early days. He's like 14 or 15 years old. And they had to play, you can see, one matinee. They were playing 4 shows a day for 9 days straight. Right. And that's the way they put this Motown music out there. Just kept, every day. You go out at 2 o'clock, you go out at 6 o'clock. And this one had a lot of the legendary acts, obviously Gladys Knight, Smokey Robinson. We sold that poster for $5,000. And it's got a bit of foxing there.
Right.
And up at the top, because, again, it was probably outside for a period of time. But actually, based on how old it was, the late 60s, it was in very good condition. And it's the famous Fox Theater, which is still right downtown Detroit, right across from the Comerica Park, the baseball stadium, and Ford Field, the football stadium. I often, when I go to a sporting event there or go to see a concert, I've seen the Stones at Comerica, a lot of people go to the Fox Theater first. And because Detroit's so poor, in any other city, this theater would be totally renovated to the nines, and it would only be done for exclusive events. But in Detroit, it's half in disrepair, and there's no money in Detroit. So it's a great place to go in, have a bunch of beer, and have fun at the Fox Theater. But it was an elite venue back in the day. And there's Fox Theaters. They were quite famous. That was from 20th Century Fox. They built these beautiful theaters in all the big American cities. And there's one in Atlanta, and they spend $50 million renovating it, making it beautiful. And there's one in Detroit, and it looks the same way it did 50 years ago. So
the good part about this poster is it is the history of Motown, early history of Motown. That's why it's in demand,
And that's how those acts were put out.
Yeah.
There'd be 10 on a bill.
Right.
You just didn't go see the Supremes. Supremes were just one of 10 bands you were seeing that day.
And they only sing 5 or 10 songs.
Travel in buses, city to city. But this was their Christmas one, and they'd play 4 times a day. And I think this might just be before the big Detroit riot. So Detroit still had a reasonable number of cities lived in the city. So people would come down over the Christmas holidays and go to the show. But then it went into decay, and nothing was really done there for years.
All right, let's see what else we got here. Blue Rodeo show at an airport.
Teenage
But
Ed, yeah.
not worth much of a poster
No,
there. No.
$20.
Yeah. Okay, the police picnic poster. That was like right after that Deep Purple poster you seen. It was the first time the police ever became big. I don't have many of these posters left. A lot of people want them just because it was the beginning of making the
And
police
Belinda
big.
Carlisle and the Go-Go's were there, who were just really coming out at the time.
And we also had like NASA Slash and a couple other
Iggy
bands.
Pop.
Iggy Pop. In fact, NASA Slash, he wouldn't get off stage. He kept playing encores till we unplugged him. And then he hated me forever after that. But like we had a deadline of other bands to play.
Which was a difficult decision because the financier of the show, it was his, he was the agent for National Slash, right?
Yeah.
So it was,
We had to move on.
Ruffled some feathers pulling that plug.
Yeah, all right. And then after that, the police went to the stadium shows, which were good, but they never made any money on the stadium shows because they didn't make money on concessions or sponsorship, and the union staging at the CNE costs more. So there was 2 other police picnic shows. I think the next one is okay.
That's the SAR stock.
This is a SAR stock. Look at the price of ticket, $21, but the bands that played.
The Stones did it as a favor to the city of Toronto because they've been here so many times because we were hit with SARS, which is like a sort of an original version of the coronavirus, but only seemed to hit a few places, China and Toronto, a couple other cities. But we were one of the hard-hit cities.
And the city of Toronto and the federal government gave $10 million to this show. That's why your ticket was $20.
Now, they had 600,000 people at it, more people than were at Woodstock were at this show.
For
and there was no problems. Everything was fine. It was just a little bit hard to get out of there at the end, although they closed with the Stones, and a lot of people say, AC/DC blew away the Stones. I'm not so sure about that. I watched the whole thing, and I've seen both bands many times. But the problem was the day went so long, and it was hot. It was like 90 degrees that day. After AC/DC, a lot of people just left. They didn't have the energy to stay for the Stones because they've been out in the sun. Luckily, we were in the backstage.
Yeah, we were in the VIP
we had
area, so
fans going, and it was great where we were. Unlimited beer, private washrooms. It was we had a great spot. So we stayed right through the Stones, but it was a very good show.
But it is a historic classic poster, but there's a lot of them around.
There's a lot of posters. There's tons of the tickets still left, which is a beautiful ticket.
Yeah.
And it's like it's not one of the Ticketmaster tickets. It's a printed ticket. But because they sold them at Dominion stores for $20 plus tax, they're everywhere. They're probably worth $25 to $30. But these are probably worth $40, $50.
But for Canada, it was a historic event.
No, I've got the massive one that actually hung at the venue, I don't know, 6-7 times that size. It's one of one. I don't know what it's worth, but it could be worth $500 to $1,000.
I have the blueprints of the site of how it was planned out and made and where everything went. But we'll go to the next one now. This is a movie poster, and from the Isle of Wight, and
so
not
a
many
concert
of them.
movie.
Yeah, a concert movie. But this one was
it's in
classic
the old days because Tiny Tim's there.
Well, also you got like Jimi Hendrix and the Doors. The rare acts to play. Like I would have loved to have been at this concert. Look at the acts: Emerson, Lake and Palmer, the Who, Jimi Hendrix, Doors.
But was this poster made back then, or is this one made later when they released it? Okay.
When they made the movie,
so it wouldn't
of that
be worth
show.
as much if it was, from the date of when the show happened. It was probably worth $1,000, but it's probably worth $50 to $100.
Yeah, but I loved it because what a concert! Like that was Moody Blues in their heydays, Emerson, Lake and Jethro Tull in their heydays, and Donovan was big. But the Who, Hendrix, and the Doors, like to see all those bands together in one day was awesome. All right, we'll go to the next one. Varsity Stadium.
That's a handbill.
Yeah. Friend of ours, Brower, was the producer of it. And it was actually the Peace Festival that John Lennon did. In fact, you don't even see John Lennon on here.
No, because they brought him in because they were going to lose too much money. They hadn't sold enough tickets.
Right.
So it was a good guy to get to help sell the rest of your tickets.
But you can see there were good acts there. But the only role this rock and roll revival became famous is because John Lennon did his peace thing there.
And Jim Morrison wouldn't let him be the headliner.
Right.
He made John Lennon, even though John Lennon, as big as the Doors were, John Lennon was 50 times bigger than the Doors ever were.
Yeah.
And this concert is still considered by many to be the second most famous concert in history because Woodstock's always ranked number one in every ranking. but this one is because this is considered the breakup of the Beatles.
Yeah.
The Beatles had never played alone, and this is the first time ever that a Beatle played without the other Beatles. So
Right.
that was the official.
That's what made it
Beatles
famous.
are done.
Yeah.
And that's why it's the second most famous concert for music history. But this
was at
handbill,
Varsity Stadium.
so I had an original handbill, and the handbill probably is worth $500. I also have the poster of this, which is slightly different. Right. Poster can be worth up to $2,000. I have some in lesser condition, $400 or $500. What happened though with the handbill? So many people wanted it, but I only had one. I made copies. Well, you can't tell where's my 500. What's the 2-cent one now?
Right.
So I've made 1,000 of these and just given them to friends and whatever. And so who knows? People might be out there paying $300-$400 for these now when really they're worth nothing.
And actually, I took a copy of this, and when Alice Cooper played at our show, I got him to sign it. So,
I got one signed by Alice Cooper as well.
All right, we'll go to some other ones now. Okay, Apple Computer paid for this. They put up $18 million, and then it got bigger. So we ended up paying about $30 million when this whole show was done, because he designed and built this whole new park of 360-acre park.
This is Wozniak.
Yeah, Wozniak from Apple. And you could see the lineup he paid was unbelievable. In fact, the good story here is he wanted all the big acts, and other promoters like Bill Graham was trying to stop him, so Wozniak hired Bill Graham to buy acts, and then Concert West and CPI tried to buy up acts. But he cut a deal with Van Halen, right? And he said, okay, Van Halen, I'll give you $1 million to play. And this is where the $1 million fees for artists really started. Going, I'll take it. And when Van Halen signed the contract, he said, I'm the biggest paid act for this show. And they said yes. And then later Wozniak was trying to find more acts, and he couldn't. And he got a hold of David Bowie and found David Bowie's only playing in Europe. He's not doing any summer shows in North America. So he paid David Bowie $1.5 million to come and play. And then Van Halen called up and said, I'm the biggest paying act for the show. And he had to give Van Halen an extra $500,000. So Van Halen took that extra $500,000 and threw a big party backstage, one of the biggest ones backstage. Got his own circus tent, jacuzzis, music, tiki bars, 50 of the gorgeous women, plus another band to play, lights and music, and threw a big party with that extra $500,000.
If they were smart, they would have said, just give me 100 shares of Apple, and they'd all be billionaires now.
Yeah. But it's a great poster and in demand because it is a legendary festival concert. I don't know how much it's worth, but
That one, you gave me one of these. This one's not in perfect condition. You can see some marks on the side, but in nice condition, it's $250.
yeah. Actually, here's another poster of that Live Aid show, which shows the stage and all the bands. And they're rare posters to find.
You didn't make that one?
No.
Okay.
It's a good one. That was there at the thing. They had 2 small posters of that.
So this actually looks like the poster they used to sell the tickets. It's got all the ticket
Probably.
details on it, right?
And that
So at the various Ticketmaster outlets, they'd have one of these like pinned up, I guess, right?
Yeah, but here's the thing. When you see this US Festival poster, it was from the US Festival 2 or 3 years before, because that's how they had the crowd poster to be able to sell this with the lineup.
So, I didn't even know they had a prior US Festival.
Yeah, he did, because I wanted to go to it, and it never worked out. And then a few years later, he decided to push one. But that was his last big show. All right, we'll go with the next one. That's that poster again. Yeah. We'll just fly over. So the reason I kept this one...
Virgin Festival.
Yeah,
so.
And they were popular, but the poster isn't worth that much. It's just 9 Inch Nails and Ben Harper were big ones on the Virgin Festival, and I think those ones are over nowadays, the Virgin Festivals. So we'll go.
I don't know if they do one or not. I'm not
sure.
Go
to the next one there. Farm Aid happens every year, but this is just a generic poster, and I think we got a few more generic posters.
Now, those are the 3 organizers, right?
Yep.
Nelson, Young, and Mellencamp.
Yeah. So that's why it made it a demanding poster, because Willie hosted the Farm Aid. And
this is kind of the style of posters they did in the 50s, where they had this sort of pink bleed into yellow to green, and you'll probably see
you'll see them on the Woodstock posters.
But it makes it look like it's a 1950s poster, but it's actually from the 80s. And there's usually on cardboard.
Yeah.
A lot of those. Was that cardboard or just poster?
It was cardboard, that one was. And then there's the next one's another Willie Nelson show with actually Wolfman Jack came there and played. It was pretty cool. Leon Russell's family. That was the one where I had to convince Willie to cross the border without his Mickeys and his pot. So Winter Pop, Maple Leaf Gardens. They were pretty good shows that they
Right.
did for New Year's, you know. And Alice Cooper hosted that one. It's not worth much, but it was a good classic series of the Winter
Yeah,
Pop
they did a
shows.
few of those.
Yeah, I think Rush played from. There's like those generic posters you were talking about with Woodstock. Not worth much, but more of a history one.
Probably isn't real. It was never even made.
No.
This is a poster. It's made up after the
Several
fact.
years after, I think.
And it's just somebody's got the typeset to make these, can print off another 1,000. So they're just something like you see them at flea markets for $5 or $10.
And they sell well because people just want a Woodstock
Something to hang
poster.
in their house, yeah.
There's the other Woodstock
Now
poster
this
of
is
94.
more like the original
Yeah,
one.
that was more of an
Is
original
this-
poster. The
but this is 94. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's about a $50 one,
Yeah.
but
This was held at
it
Saugerties.
looks similar to one of the posters from the original Woodstock.
And the reason they say Woodstock 2 is they have the double doves to say it's Woodstock 2. And a reasonable lineup. Hey, Glenn.
Wolf, how you doing, buddy?
Good. I brought you a whole bunch of more rock and roll stuff to show you. And as I told you before, when you have over 10,000 rock and roll items, this is the place, Glory Day Collectibles, that you bring your stuff to find out what it's worth, whether it's passes, tickets, t-shirts, programs, posters, and other rock and roll memorabilia. Glenn's group, they analyze it. They tell you whether it's a real autograph, a fake autograph, a good poster, a good program, or whether they're copies.
If I'll get lucky, I'll find a joint in this pocket. No, nothing. Too bad. It's always good. You never know when you find drugs from one of the roadies.